So I've noticed that there's been a lot of people who have been asking for advice on how they can develop spiritually, what practices they can do, or at least asking me what I do. And I wanted to share with you today a way that you can develop your spiritual practice, or three things really that you can implement to help you. And these are things that I try to do on a daily basis, and they're not easy. None of this is ever easy, but in doing things that are beneficial for us is generally never easy. But these are super powerful, and they were laid down by a man called the Shivapuri Baba, and he became realized when he was 50 years old. He basically he did the classic thing of going to a forest, meditating and praying and connecting with God, and eventually became realized. And he spent like 30 years or something ridiculous there doing that. And when he became realized, these were his teachings. This is what he laid down as a way to achieve what he had achieved. And the three main disciplines that he talks about is physical discipline, moral or mental discipline, and spiritual discipline. So I'll talk about those three today. Physical discipline was related to, as you can imagine, exercising the body, everything within balance. So eating a balanced diet, not eating too much or too little, making sure that we get enough sleep but not too much sleep, making sure that whatever we take in through the senses is positive. So we're not watching negativity, we're not listening to gossiping and other negativity. And basically everything to do with physical body is under some sort of control and balance. And so he talks about the senses need to be controlled. So otherwise we just live life going by whatever the senses fancy. And if the senses fancy masturbating, if the senses feel like eating rubbish, if the senses feel like watching a load of rubbish, we're just led constantly by what the senses want, and rather than what we need and what we should have. And obviously this has got to be balanced, otherwise we get extreme in both sides. So he talks about disciplining the body and all of the senses so that they're under our control, and rather than controlling us, because he says that it's hard to progress spiritually when the senses are in control of us and we're not able to maintain this body properly. It's hard to develop and access higher and higher levels of consciousness because we're not yet mastering this level of consciousness. So he talks about disciplining the body, physical discipline. The second one is moral or mental discipline, and that's mostly related to our thoughts and what we think about. So he was saying that things like anger and jealousy, pride and envy, they need to be managed and dealt with at the thought level. So it's no good kind of stopping ourselves acting in a way that's angry if we're still engaging angry thoughts, because we're only kind of working at the top level. We're not weeding out the problem. And so he says that we need to weed out these things. He talks about the mind as being like a garden, and we need to weed out the weeds of, all these negative attributes like fear and anger and jealousy and all of those things as soon as they come up in us, which he says is normal. It's normal that we have these things arise, just like it's normal that weeds come up in a garden, but it's up to us to manage them. It's up to us to remove them really early on and not allow them to grow and become a real big problem. And then he also says that we should then fuel the positive natures, so fearlessness, selflessness, charity, all of the positive attributes you can think of. We should then develop them, fuel those kind of thoughts, and create a mind which is full of good virtues. He calls them higher natures, lower natures and higher natures. And he said that the mind is, for a lot of people, overrun with lower natures, and this needs to be resolved. It obviously takes a lot of time and a lot of control again, but this is how we develop moral discipline. Then he talks about spiritual discipline, and this is mostly related to directing our attention towards the divine. He says that the entire goal of spirituality is to reach our source, where we've come from. And people could call that different names. So a lot of people might use like the universe or consciousness or God. I'm going to use God just for simplicity. So he says that the whole purpose of the human form, the human life, is it's a journey all the way up back to God, back to where we're from. And to do that, we need to direct our attention to God. So we need to direct our soul and our intent and everything towards that, reaching that goal, because he says that if we want anything in life, we have to think about it, we have to aspire to it, we have to focus on it. So if I want to run a marathon, I have to focus on that, I have to think about it, I have to create a bit of a blueprint in my mind and work towards it, and eventually, hopefully, for most people, they'd be able to achieve that goal. And he said it's the same with spiritual goals. You know, the ultimate goal of spirituality is to reach the divine, or to reach enlightenment or self-realization, whichever way you want to look at that. And he says to do that, you have to have a blueprint in your mind and direct your attention and your focus towards the divine, towards that goal. And so to do that, he says, remembering the name of the divine. So whether you use the word God, whether you use the word Jesus or Krishna or Allah or God, just God, whatever the word is that you use, or whatever the ultimate places that you direct your attention to or you believe in, he says remembering that name and repeating the name of God and communicating in your mind and asking to be held there, asking to see God and to realize that goal. And he says that this is spiritual discipline. This is the direct route for spirituality and meditating on God. So if you were a Christian, you would meditate with the image of Jesus perhaps, or if you were Hindu, you'd meditate on the image of Krishna. And I'm actually not Hindu or Christian, or I don't follow any particular religion, but I do kind of connect with Krishna because I find that an easy image to picture, and it's an image that I like. And so I direct my prayers and my attention in meditation towards Krishna, and that develops this communion, it develops this inner connection. And a lot of people will talk about intuition and the universe and things like that. So this is just another term for that. I think the names can kind of get in the way and put people off, but you don't have to use these particular names if you don't want to. But I would recommend using one, because I think that it gives us an image that we can create, and as humans we need an image, and these are just different images of the one God or of the one source. You know, Jesus, Krishna, Allah, Buddha, all of these different people are just images of the one God, and they are appropriate and appeal to different types of people from different backgrounds and from different times in history. So I think it's good to pick out one of those, and it doesn't mean that you have to then become Christian or Hindu or anything else, but just pick one and just direct your prayers and your attention to one of those faces, to one of those people, because it's going to God. They're just the faces of God in different forms. So personally, I use Krishna, and he says that this is spiritual discipline then. When you meditate on God, when you communicate with God, when you repeat the name of God. So if you were to use Krishna like me, your mantra would be just repeating the name of Krishna. Just that becomes your mantra. And that is then directing your focus and aspiration towards the end goal, which is, I think, the biggest missing link in a lot of people's spiritual practice, because they don't have that. They do kind of standard meditations, they might do yoga and things like that. And if this is you, like, it's totally normal, because it's not necessarily that talked about. But the next step really for a lot of people, I believe, is the spiritual discipline part, the directing yourself towards the end goal. And yeah, they're the three disciplines that he laid down. They personally make a lot of sense to me, and I practice them. I try to live a balanced life. I try to weed out negative thoughts and fill my mind with more positive ways of thinking, more positive virtues. And I connect in my mind all the time, as often as I can, to God. So that is an approach. Might not be the one that works for you, but this is an approach that you could integrate into your life to become and work towards at least becoming enlightened. And yeah, hope you liked it. If you want a link to my Instagram, I'll put it in the description. I also have a weekly newsletter which I'll put in the description as well. And if you want more of this, please subscribe.